Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Jewelry Makers Guild podcast. I'm Tonya Davidson, the creator of the Jewelry Makers Guild and a fellow maker of 25 years. It's my quest to learn as much as I can, try as many materials and techniques, and then to share those with other artists. So I thought it would be fun if I could do a podcast where it was visual. I could show the artist's work, I could ask them questions about how they got to this place in their journey, and to find out what makes them tick, what makes their work so special, because I think it's the artist behind the work, not the work itself, that is so interesting. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do me a huge favor and the artist that I'm interviewing by smashing the like button down below and subscribing to the channel. Then you'll see all the rest of the podcasts that have been done. There are 10 other podcasts currently. This is number 11. You'll be able to watch those or listen to those while you're working in your studio, and that would help all of us get that viewed out to other people as well. So please help me welcome today Merry-Lee Rae to my podcast. Hi, Merry-Lee. So for those of you who don't know Merry-Lee, let me introduce her. Merry-Lee has been making cloisonne for 45 years. She was raised in Santa Clara, California, and began making jewelry as a teenager, and her fascination with enamels and precious metals has been her lifelong passion. Her formal education was in mathematics, of all things that artists usually hate math, and she fully intended to pursue a respectable career in Silicon Valley. But as luck would have it, Merry-Lee got too busy doing what she loved and never had time to go to work. So instead, she found herself participating in American Craft Council shows such as Rhinebeck, Baltimore, West Springfield, and San Francisco, and later did the JCK in Las Vegas in the Designer Center. She is an award-winning artist. She's won a lot of awards, and they're all so well-deserved, but she placed first in the Sol Bell Awards by Rio Grande in 2014, and first place in the Enamel Distinction Award in 2019 for the MJSA Vision Award. Amazing. Merry-Lee is a special type of person in that she is an equally wise educator and a talented artist. I want to read a statement that she gave me on learning and teaching because I feel it's so important, not only being an artist but also an educator, to have these words said. And it seems apropos for this week because I've seen a lot of occasions where people were wavering on where they were in this area. So let me read this because I think it's so wonderful and speaks volumes about her, but also for me too. So when Merry-Lee first began, there weren't many books or instructors. She bought Margaret Seeler's book in the 1970s and hired her to travel to California for a workshop because she was desperate to get some information. With her 3 friends, she took it. And Margaret was very giving. At the time, most enamelists were very secretive about their process. She remembers being frustrated by the Norwegian pieces that were done around 1900. Most of their secrets went to the grave with them, and she felt that what we were doing in the 70s with enameling was child's play compared to what they had accomplished in the 1900s. So imagine what she and others could have accomplished in the last half a century if they had been able to build on the base of knowledge that should have been available. While others were closely guarding their secrets, she became technically fluent in the art of cloisonne. Systematically breaking the rules, she came up with her own way of doing things by making thousands of pieces. Now at 67 years old, or young, a great deal of her energy is spent mentoring and teaching rather than producing. She would still rather make pieces, and she is the happiest when she is figuring out how to achieve a result that is new to her. But in the big picture, she feels passionate about sharing and educating. She won't likely ever write a book. If she knows something that will help someone realize their dreams, she will share it. And in turn, she expects them to share. She is offended by people with secrets about processes. It should be about taking the process and making it your own, making it art. Telling a story about who you are that someday someone will hold that object in their hand and have an inkling of who you were as a person. I want to say that again. when they hold your piece in their hand, they have some inkling of who you were as a person and as an artist. So enamel will endure.
I just have to fix something.
Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. That never happens. I was wondering why that happened. Thank you.
On the screen, or we can't
Okay.
see all of her.
Okay, so sorry about that. So I just want to back up and say that one more time because it's so good and I don't want you to forget about it. But when you learn a process or a technique, that you're supposed to take that and make that your own. You're not supposed to copy that person. They're not teaching you their art. They're teaching you the technique. And it's up to you to make something with that. And I love that Merry-Lee has said this. So I wanted you guys to hear those words because it says a lot and speaks volumes about her as a teacher, an educator, and as an artist. Because in the end, enamel will endure brilliantly as it has for centuries. And she says, you owe it to yourself to learn as much as you can about the process so you aren't encumbered by your technical skills. It is why she teaches technique and not creativity. What you make with the technical knowledge is none of her business. That you have the access to the skills is. So I want to say bravo to Merry-Lee for that wonderful statement. I think it says so much, and I'm so glad someone else said it, other than myself, because I think everyone needs to hear that. Just, take it, make it, which is what you did. You took these techniques and these skills, and you made this art that when someone holds this piece in their hand, they know exactly who you are. And I love that. So in the bottom right-hand corner of our screen, you'll find Merry-Lee's website and her social media pages. Be sure to check those out and follow her. I will also post in the comments after the podcast has concluded her contact information, especially info on where you can see her wonderful work and sign up for her amazing online classes and maybe soon in person. So thank you so much for joining me today, Merry-Lee. It is so great to have you here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And as we talk, I'm going to be showing your work, slides of your work. So if at any time you want me to be quiet so you can say something about the work, even if it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, if you just want to say, hey, there's that granulation I was talking about, or here's the stone I was talking about, please don't hesitate to interrupt me. And I'm really looking forward to finding out what makes you tick as an artist and finding out more about how you got started and what your story is behind your work. So let's dig in.
Okay.
For most all of us, there was someone or something or some time that happened that sparked that drive for us to create. And I'm curious if you could share with us some of your earliest memories about making art or when you first discovered enameling that just really sparked that desire in you to get started down that path.
Well, I actually don't remember a time when I wasn't making things. My mother always said that I arranged the peas and carrots on my high chair tray into patterns. So I guess I've been making art forever. But the first enameling that I did, I took a summer school craft class when I was a freshman in high school. And they had enamels in a kiln there. And so I did my first enamel piece, and I decided to make a piece of plique-à-jour for my first piece.
The first piece.
It was successful, and so then I did a couple other little copper enamel sort of things, and then the next project that I did was I did a pierced work and sweat soldered ring, and the teacher was going to give us nickel silver. And I went home and I was doing drawings, and my dad said, well, if you're going to spend that kind of time on it, why don't you make it out of silver? And I said, well, because it'll cost $2 if I make it out of silver. and he gave me the $2. And so I made my first ring in silver, and I was 14. And then the day I finished it, I sold it to my guitar teacher for $20.
Well.
So then I had enough money to buy enough materials to make 10 more rings.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of the whole thing. And then my dad was a hobby silversmith, hobbyist, and used to make stuff in the garage. And so it was one of the ways that I spent time with him was sitting next to him and making stuff. So I got such a great start because he was very precise.
Love that. Love that. And he
Yeah.
taught you how to use the tools and how to be confident in the studio. And sounds like he was all about empowering you too. Who cares about the $2 worth of silver and if you make a mistake? And that's it's wonderful.
I feel like I got well, I had a really extraordinary family, and from a very early age, I was pretty sure that I could do anything that I decided I was going to do because that's what my parents told me. And it has proven to be true. There's never been anything that I couldn't do. Of course, now I'm not very athletic anymore. I've had to cross a few things off my list. I don't think I'll be climbing Mount Everest or anything like that, but I have lots of other things to do.
I think I would be worried about missing those days in my studio. I don't know why.
Yes, me too. Yeah, me too.
Mount Everest, no, I got to be in my studio. I would miss it for too long. So the next question I have for you is a two-part question. So I believe that all of our experiences, our travels, and our ups and downs, or the ebb and flow of life, and the people we choose to spend our precious time with, and even the animals that we take time to love and take care of, help shape the person that we become. So who or what maybe helped shape your work besides your dad?
Oh, boy. There is so many experiences that I've had that have altered my course. I was so lucky to have amazing teachers in school. Some of them were math teachers and some of them were art teachers, and people, I was exposed to wonderful experiences from a very early age. My mother was a musician, and I don't know. And then I saw Michelangelo's work in person as a teenager, and it made me weep. It was just so amazing. And so, I grew up with that kind of a experience of being so enamored with other art, and Guillermo del Toro, because he's such a visionary of a filmmaker, and the people around me, my horses, my flowers, I love it all.
Yeah, and it all shapes who we are. And sometimes there's something that's a little bit bigger, but sometimes it's just all the different, every decade of our life, I think, or every so many years, something happens. Maybe it's unfortunate, like I lost both my parents within a 5-year period. But in so many ways, that was a gift. And it really stopped me from doing the things that I was doing, maybe the bad habits or shortcomings or lack of confidence. And it was a kick in the pants. So I think they're all great. And some of them stand out more than others. But I know that you have a love of horses, so I wanted to ask about that too. So we'll get to see a picture later. But yeah, they all, when I showed horses, it was like that. I had to learn how to communicate with an animal, which was a whole nother thing that probably made me a better teacher, in the end.
Yes, I believe it does. Yeah, absolutely.
So my next question is, I think that the best art is made by people who are driven by an underlying need to communicate, to leave their mark or to tell their stories, because we have a lot of stories to tell, some of us. More than others. So what are you trying to communicate through your art?
I think it's pretty simple. I think it's my love of life is is really the thing that's forefront for me. And like in the little section that you read about somebody 200 years from now holding something in their hands that I made, there will be people that work speaks to, and those people will know me. And that's such a wonderful thing for me to know that what I love is going to be expressed later too. Yeah. So
it's that legacy thing we talk about, right? How do you leave your mark in the world?
It's a kind of a romantic notion in a sense where you just want people to know who you are, you know, to really understand each other. And I find art as a wonderful way to be able to do that. So,
well, it's a beautiful way to do it, right? What other profession leaves such beauty behind? And affects
I'm sorry?
What other profession leaves so much beauty behind? You know, is the end result other than art?
We're so lucky.
We are.
Yeah.
So a lot of artists get attached to their work and they have a hard time parting with it. And so for them, it's about it's about the piece in the end. And for others, it's about the journey. Like, can I do this with it? Can I try this with it? So what do you think is more of a drive for you when you start out to make a piece? Is it going to be the end result, or is it going to be the journey of making that piece?
I think it's mostly the journey for me, because otherwise, why would I want to challenge myself? So, I really, I went for years making many hundreds of pieces a year, and selling all of those pieces through galleries and to individuals. And I think at some point in my career, like 15 years into it, I maybe owned 3 pieces of my own work, because I was basically doing skill building exercises and selling them and buying materials so that I could do more exercises, so I could say more, so that I could go on to the next thing. So it really is about the journey to me. So this piece that we're looking at right now is a very cool piece, because this was a collaboration between Jan Harrell and I.
Oh.
That we did. It was auctioned off at an enamel conference and benefited the educational fund for the Enamelist Society. Mm-hmm. And anyway, it was a completely wonderful experience to work on this piece with Jan. We had so much fun with it. So anyway, I just had to stop us because
it's good.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. I want to hear about, if you see a piece and there's a story behind it, because those are things we never really hear about. We never know, well, how did this piece come about? And you both are so whimsical and joyful people. To see the pieces, it makes a lot of sense. And I looked at this piece and I thought, well, that kind of looks like a piece I've seen before. And it was, I think Jan had shown something similar with a similar kind of handle that she had made once upon a time. So that makes sense. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. What part did you do the cloisonne, and she did some of the rest of it?
Yeah, I did the enamel part. It's actually a magnifying glass, and it's 2-sided. So this side of it is the outside of the woman, that is soft and floral and romantic. And except for the fact that entwined in her hair is the demon's horn in the cloisonne, and the other side of the piece is the inside of the woman, and as a demon, entwined in snakes. And it's just the magnifying glass is on the other side of the piece, and so you're looking at the inside of the woman through the magnifying glass. And And then the dark spot in the middle there is actually a hole that you can hold it up and actually see through it. Yeah.
Neat.
So, yeah. So we came up with the idea over a couple of martinis, actually.
That's always a good starter.
Yeah.
So I love the work that you do. There's always sort of a theme or a story behind it. And I had read a story about your bobcat, how you found the inspiration for that. So how do you find your inspiration or drive for your work? Is it based on an experience or a material, or what drives that starting point where, I'm going to do this thing on a mermaid or a cat or whatever your subject matter is?
Well, sometimes the instigation for what's going to be the next thing that I do is there's a lot of different reasons that I do things. Like one of the pieces that I'm working on right now is going to be a pretty major piece, but I am working on a workshop, an online workshop on plique-à-jour. And so I started thinking about what if I was going to do a plique-à-jour piece right now, what would I want to do? And I've been wanting to do this piece for a while. That is a knife handle of a mermaid and a dolphin entwined, and the tail of this mermaid will be plique-à-jour. So so that was what I needed a project to use as my demo piece for this workshop that I found, and that was the instigation for that design, and it kind of blossomed into it'll probably blossom into a few hundred hours of making it at this point. So I think that there's probably pictures of that in the slides here, and then like the bobcat piece. Bobcat piece was really kind of a special moment in time. I went through probably a year where every time I turned around, there was a bobcat crossing my path. And I maybe before that time had only seen one or two bobcats in the wild before in my whole life. But the first one was I'm out down the street on my horse going on. We had these beautiful little windy trails that go up through a wooded area, little narrow trails, and we came around the corner. I was in the front and came around the corner, and my horse stopped, and there was a bobcat standing in the middle of the trail, and it turned around and faced us, and it sat down, and we all paused and enjoyed each other's company for a minute, and then the bobcat stood up and disappeared into the brush, and we went on. And then I was driving home in the middle of the night, maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, a month later, and there was a bobcat that shot out across the road and stopped in front of my car and turned and faced me and sat down and looked at me and then went away. And I had probably 8 or 10 experiences that were similar to this with these bobcats. And this bobcat kept crossing my path. So then I looked up in Native American Indian lore, what is the meaning of the bobcat? And it's the few things that I came up with. One of them is that it is the keeper of secrets and the protector of dreams. Mm-hmm. And so this bobcat, below the bobcat, there's a locket. And when you open the locket up, there's a woman that's reclining in enamel also, and sleeping and dreaming. And so she's dreaming the bobcat as the bobcat is protecting her dreams. And the secret treasure is the woman dreaming the bobcat. So that's where that piece all started. And the woman inside the locket, I probably made that piece 6 or 8 times before I finally got what I wanted, so that I could finish the piece. So, yeah. But yeah, so sometimes it's something as simple as wondering if I can do something. And sometimes, like this piece, was a tray. It's about 10 inches long, and the 2 objects in the middle are blown glass bottles that my friend Elaine Hyde made, that are perfume bottles. And so this little tray is a perfume tray.
Wow.
With the pond. So when you pull the water lilies on top of those out, that it has that long glass stopper in the top of, that goes down into the perfume. I'm sure it'll never have perfume in it. That's how things go like that. But and it was on a Lazy Susan, and I did it's koa is the wood, and I did the woodwork for it also.
Wow.
Yeah. So
is the Dragonfly plique-à-jour?
Yes, it is. Yeah, you can see. I'm going to point it out to everybody. On your screen. It's the bottom right-hand corner of the piece. There's a little gold dragonfly with plique-à-jour wings on it.
How big is that? The dragonfly?
It's probably 2 inches by 2 inches.
Wow, it's beautiful.
So,
it's absolutely beautiful.
You.
So you just said to yourself one day, well, I'm going to work in wood, so I need to learn how to do this, or?
Yeah, I did. I combined wood with my pieces occasionally, back in a certain period of what I was doing, because there was work that I wanted to make that wasn't necessarily wearable. They were more objects, like this is an object. And so I did the woodwork for them because it was cheaper than hiring somebody to do it.
Yes.
And I enjoyed doing it too. Yeah. It was so different than my normal daily task.
I love it. Love it. I'm going to fast forward the slides to the one that you were talking about with the bobcat while I ask you a few questions that some of the members had that they wanted me to ask you. So we'll have some, we can look at that piece that you were just talking about and leave that up while, and then we'll come back to these. So that is the piece in its locket closed form. And this is the open with the woman inside. So I'm just going to leave that up for people to look at while I ask you these questions about that they wanted to pick your brain about. So what is your favorite technique other than cloisonne?
Well, in enameling.
It doesn't have to be enameling. It could be anything.
Okay. Well, so, all right. In enameling, my most recent love affair has been with mason stains. Because, like, on this woman, the reason that piece was so challenging to me was that, well, for one thing, it's only about 1 inch wide. So there's a lot of little tiny detail in a small space. And I had been playing with lots of different ways of making marks in enamel besides just cloisonne, with using oxides and painting with them, and color the ceramic pencils and P3 and the different black mediums that you can use as underglaze and overglaze, and just there's a whole bunch of different things that you can use that are, a lot of them are China painting type materials, but man, I just was always so bad at it. I really struggled with learning to use those materials, and I found them very restrictive. So when I finally learned about mason stains with Martha Banyas, my goddess of enamelist friend, the mason stains are just so user friendly. They're really, really easy to use. They don't argue with you. You can mix them with anything, and you can create images in enamel that I've never been able to accomplish before. And I think if I were doing this piece again with mason stains, I wouldn't have struggled so with the image of this woman. The pieces that I did before I got to this one were so clumsy because the materials were so cumbersome, and I really, really loved the mason stains. So did I get off plot there?
No, you answered it perfectly. Yes, it was great.
Good.
All these other questions started popping up, and I took your class that you offered on mason stains. I haven't finished it yet, but it's on my list of things to do. And I was really into enamels for a long time, and then I veered away from that. And now I feel this calling to add some color back, and I think mason stains is going to be the way to do that. So I'm really looking forward to finishing that class and trying it.
Yeah. I think mason stains. One of my students, Darcy, who I'm so proud to be able to mentor her. I think that she has taken what she learned from me and taken what she learned from Martha Banyas and combined those two techniques into cloisonne in a way that's going to change the future of cloisonne. Nice. That's how spectacularly successful she has made this. And so I'm really excited to see what she does next, because it's just a match made in heaven.
Nice.
So
another question that one of the members had is, can you share your source for gold foils or tell them where they might find it?
Sure. Yeah. So my daughter has taken over the distributorship from Coral. What used to be Enamel Work Supply is now Enamel Art Supply, and the gold foil that Coral always had is fabulous gold foil. It's made domestically. It's 1.4 microns, so it's fairly heavy in comparison to other gold foils.
Yes.
And I think that it's the best value of gold foil that you can get out there. Is that it's a very nice to work with. It's not a gold leaf, it's a gold foil.
Great.
And that's Enamel Art Supply. But so you can make your own foil. And a lot of times when I'm working on a piece that I want to include gold underneath the enamel, I will use a piece of foil that I've made from 24 karat. And this piece is 38 microns. So it's roughly 25 times as thick as what Enamel Art Supply sells. And then I've made some that's like 12 microns, and this is like 9 times thicker than what you can commercially buy. So all of this can be embossed and changed, textured, and changed in really beautiful ways. And I can give you a trick for getting it this thin if you want. I went and heard a lecture with Charles Luton Brain, who's this he's like such a nerd. I love nerds. But anyway, he's a metal nerd, and he was talking about fusing metal together with pressure. And I went, oh, that's what happened. I had my rolling mill will only roll it to 38 microns. That's the thinnest I can get it. I wanted it thinner.
Uh-huh.
So I was milling it in between layers of copper,
Yes.
and my sandwich fused together
Stick.
just by
Yes.
rolling it through the
Sticks.
rolling mill. I couldn't get it apart again. So then I did it with silver, did the same thing. So when I was listening to this lecture, and Charles Luton Brain said that you could laminate metals with pressure only, I went, well, that's what happened. So I asked him, well, how do you keep it from laminating? He said, just oxidize your copper.
Yes. You soot it up. Yeah.
I had no idea. So anyway, I took sheets of copper and I polished them, and then I torched them so that they had a nice patina on them, and then that's how I make these pieces of gold foil. Anyway, so there you go. That's how to make yourself a nice piece of gold foil.
That's awesome. And that's how I do make my gold when I'm alloying it for fusing it onto the surface of steel. It's the same process, making it really thin. And so you have to learn those tricks. And thankfully, I've never had any bond to the copper yet.
Oh.
I think I was just getting lucky. I didn't soot it on purpose or get it dirty on purpose, but then I learned you better make sure you do that so it doesn't stick. So all these good little tips that you sometimes you don't think about, it just doesn't occur to you. So someone wanted to know, what is your most challenging piece you've ever made?
Well, all my favorite pieces are my most challenging pieces. So I have a fortune cookie that's been stuck to my workbench for 40 years that says, your great pleasure in life is doing what others say you cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And I really have taken that to heart. And in fact, I've so taken it to heart that my great pleasure in life is doing what I think maybe I can't do, and figuring out a way to do it. So a lot of times, pieces that my best work is always, I'm way in over my head. I'm like in deep water, and trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B. And those are the pieces that I love the most, and they're the pieces that are the biggest challenge. All of the pieces that I win awards with are always pieces that there was a point at which I thought I would never finish them because I was over my head. And there's a mermaid piece that I just won second place in Saltville in 2020 with, that the metalwork for it was like, I was in trouble on this metalwork. And I stuck it in my safe. It was sitting in my safe for 2 years, and I finally got it out and finished it. And it just took working through all the problems until it was done. I love a good challenge. So
I think sometimes we're gluttons for punishment. And I have a lot of pieces that I try new things with. I'm always experimenting, and I'm like, you're never going to make any money because you spend so much time like trying these ideas that you have in your head that you think you're the first one that's ever done. So I'll sit and try to work through it and make the piece. And I do the same thing. I stick it in a drawer because I get to this place where I feel bruised and bloody and I need to heal before I can take it out again and work on it again. So I have a lot of drawerfuls of things that aren't finished because I think I'm just like being abused by myself sometimes. Do you ever feel that way?
Sometimes those things that aren't finished, it might not be a finished object, but the journey might be finished.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So a lot of times it doesn't really have what's important about making stuff is knowing when you've finished the lesson, when you finish the journey, when you've completed the trip. And it might be when the piece is not finished in what we would call finished.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
I don't have any problem. They're exercises. They're all push-ups and sit-ups,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, or a journey over Kilimanjaro or whatever. Sounds so
Yeah.
good. I have lots of blisters on my feet sometimes. Okay,
Yeah,
so
or just waiting for the inspiration to figure it out
yeah.
sometimes. Yeah.
This last question is sort of a two-parter from a member. What base metal would you recommend starting learning enameling? And then can you use copper as a base, place silver foil over it, and have that enamel show the texture?
Okay, the first half of the question's easy for me because I think using fine silver as your base for cloisonne is very sensible. You it's you don't have to work so hard to beat it into submission, if you will. You know, it's really clean. It's very forgiving, and you know, almost every piece that I do is on 26 gauge thick. It's very thin.
Fine
So
silver.
though,
Fine silver.
yes, fine silver. So um, an ounce of fine silver in 26 gauge is 2 inches by 6 inches.
It's a lot.
That's a pretty big piece of metal. You can do a lot for $30.
Yeah.
And so why fight the uphill battle of using a material that is more problematic and presents you with more technical issues.
Right.
So as far as copper goes, the piece that you saw that I made with Jen Harrell, that piece was on copper because I wanted the intrinsic properties of the copper. I love how the copper reacts with the colors, and that oxidization process of that of the glass fusing to the copper is just really beautiful in my eyes. The woman that's inside the bobcat, that piece is also on copper because I wanted the richness of the copper with the woman. So when I use copper, I use it because the copper itself has value in the finished piece. The idea of using copper and then covering it with silver foil or gold foil seems sort of seems like a waste of the copper, you know, because the copper itself is so beautiful. So can you? I'm not sure if she was asking, can you texture the copper, cover it with foil, and have the texture of the copper show through? Do you think that's what she was asking?
No, I think
Or
she
they
was
were
asking about texturing the silver foil.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's got yes, absolutely. So the best foil to do that is going to be thicker than your standard foil. And my daughter happens to we found a place in Japan that will make us pure silver foil that's 10 microns, which is pretty thick, and you can really emboss it in a lot of different ways and texture it in a lot of different ways, and then fuse that onto a layer of glass or layer of enamel on top of your copper. So yeah, that's absolutely possible. And yeah, so you have to use thicker foil if you're going to do texturing on it and have it show up. The Gimbaria foil, which is 4.5 microns, you can texture that successfully, but I think the 10 micron foil is better for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I lied. There's another question. One of the members are there any tips for opalescent enamels? And I know that's your specialty. So. Well,
you know, the funny thing is I don't actually use opalescence very much in my own work, because it doesn't fit into my my artistic palette very well, but I happen to have developed a niche for myself in the teaching world for opalescence because of my mathematical nature. To succeed with the true opalescent enamels, you have to be kind of a scientist, and if you can't be a scientist, then you better learn from somebody that can give you that set of parameters and rules to follow so that you don't end up losing it. So this is my suggestion for doing opalescent pieces. There are opalescent enamels that are sold that are truly not real opalescents. They're not true opalescent enamels. They are actually semi-transparent. And they're going to give you that beautiful softness and diffusion of color. And you can do beautiful shading and transparency and then cover that with layers of the not true opal white or colors. And that shading will show up through that diffused softness of that of a non-true opal, the semi-transparent enamels. So a true opalescent is immiscible enamels, two enamels that are together in the same product that are like oil and water. They don't mix. Mm-hmm. And so when you fire them, one of the enamels sinks to the bottom and the other one raises to the top. And as long as you don't emulsify that combination of enamels, then there'll be this extraordinary, beautiful, magical opal quality. But they're evil. They're very evil because they, if you get them a little bit too hot, then those two properties of that glass will emulsify, and it turns to a really ugly, opaque color. And so, for the most part, I'd say just use these semi-transparent colors. But if you want that truly magical opal, I have it down to a science, and I will tell you exactly what you need to do it. And now is when I should plug my online classroom, because yes, there are 2 complete workshops on exactly how to get that opal, what the rules are, what you have to do, and how to troubleshoot it. So I would say if you want to learn without spending 45 years figuring it out, just go and get my formula.
That's great. It's way cheaper. I mean, when you were talking about the copper versus the silver, I think sometimes beginners forget that your biggest cost is your labor. So if you're spending all this time cleaning copper, fighting the oxides, fighting all the other issues, it actually costs you more than the silver. So you know, trying to reinvent the wheel, making samples of this opalescent is actually going to cost you far more than just going to someone who's figured it out and can give you it on a silver platter and say, here you go, do it.
Just the fact that so many people, one of the first questions they ask me is, why did my wires disappear? And I can tell them unequivocally that the reason that their wires disappeared was because they used copper and silver on the same piece, and they fired it hotter than 1435.2 degrees. and the 2 metals were seeking to find that 1435 degrees so that they could alloy. Mm-hmm. And then the silver disappears into the copper.
Right.
So why would you do that to yourself? Spend all those hours doing all of that work, and then have it all disappear?
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So why not just start with silver and skip the heartache?
Unless you're a glutton for punishment.
Exactly.
In a really bad way.
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question for you is what's on your bench? What are you working on right now?
Boy, I have all kinds of stuff on my bench. The big one is that Mermaid knife handle.
Oh, this
And
one.
yes, I did see a drawing go by. So it's two-sided. The mermaid and the dolphin are facing front on one side of the knife blade, and then on the other side, you're seeing the back of the mermaid, and then the two little tail parts that are there in metal already on the right-hand side are the two sample pieces that I did. I'm kind of pushing the envelope with this. I'm making shapes that are not such great shapes for doing plique-à-jour. And I wanted to see how far I could push that before I ended up with cracking trouble. And one of those two parts is cracked and the other one's not. And I know what happened. But I found the place that what I needed to do to achieve a successful result. But anyway, so that's that particular piece is the thing that's on my bench. And the photo there is my daughter, because that little face on that mermaid is like, half an inch.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was having a lot of trouble drawing that little face. So my daughter was going by and I just grabbed her as she was going by and said, let me take a few photos. I'm having trouble with this. So.
And you were like, no, hold your hand like this.
Yeah, I actually wasn't too worried about the hand because I knew that part of the hand was going to be hidden behind the dolphin. And I was going to be okay with that, but it didn't hurt to have that, the wrist, the slope of the wrist was kind of important, and she made it really easy for me.
She did.
So,
she did a good job.
She did. She's great.
And what's this piece that you're working on?
Well, that's one I have. I'm always trying to up my metal skills because I would say I'm a much better enamelist than I am metal worker. And so for the last 4 to 5 years, I've been kind of playing catch up with my metal work. And then I had a full-time goldsmith for 20 years while I was doing all these shows and everything and selling to galleries. And so for 20 years, I didn't do any of my own metal work. I got to sit and just do the enameling.
Wow.
And so anyway, so this is a ring that I'm designing. I got myself a beautiful Ethiopian opal, and I've been, and actually I have this. It's changed a lot in design since I started it, but I've got this piece about halfway done now, and
Nice.
I just go back and forth, and so I know you've taken classes from Kent Rively also, who I can plug right now because he is the best fabricator I know, and he's also a very gifted teacher, and he has online classes now also, and so I always have I'm always doing one or the other of his classes, just trying to keep on making my my metal work better.
I see that you have the trillions in there, which we all were a little bit jealous that you're so good at doing the trillion tubing and fitting those into that setting.
Actually, I brought out to my little space here my trillion draw plate so that you guys could see. This is the trick for making trillion shaped tubing is the trillion draw plate. And because let's see if I can make this so you guys can see it. You can make any shaped tubing if you have a draw plate to draw it down in, and then I can cut off a section and then draw down some more and make smaller ones, and so it's one of the things I love to do when I can't figure out what I want to do next, is make tubing.
There's something wrong with you.
I know, right?
And are these some sample pieces, or is this a project you're working on?
Yeah, so these are all, I have one of the online classes that I have is called Mastering Color. And it's a series of exercises that I have people do to build their color skills with enamel, and so it's kind of an ongoing class. I add new information to it all the time, new exercises to it. So it's basically exercises to keep people focused and to strengthen their skills.
I think that's wonderful. Yeah, love it. And this is a watch face you're working on?
Yes. So I've been working with, boy, I have a lot of irons in the fire, don't I? I've been working with a woman named Celeste Wong, who owns the Celeste Watch Company. And well, over the years, I've had so many people contact me, mostly from Switzerland, who wanted to know if I could make cloisonne dials for them. Mm-hmm. And the first question I always asked was, how much depth can you give me? How thick can I make the dial? And they'd say like 0.8 millimeters for the counter enamel, the metal, and the cloisonne. And I'd just say, nope, I'm not interested. I can't do what I do with too thin of a place. So when Celeste came to me, I said, how much depth can you give me? And she said, how much do you need?
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So together, with me, I was the troublemaker and she was the problem solver. And between the two of us, she was able to have the watch case built and the movement built to accommodate an enamel piece that is 2.2 millimeters thick.
Nice.
So, and she has a program where she sends you these little discs that you see in the picture here, and you enamel it, and then you send it back to her, and she installs it in her watch.
Wow.
And they're really pretty cool. So
they're very
cool. Now anybody can make an enamel watch instead of that 1 gallon.
Yes.
Switzerland. That's $130,000.
Wow.
Per watch. So
I was reading that article last week about her, and I thought, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So my next question is, it's a two-part question. I'm wondering what you do daily to prepare yourself for a creative day, and what does your perfect studio day look like?
Sure. Well, my perfect studio day, I guess, would be when there's nobody else on the property and I can stay in my studio for 14 hours and just make stuff and not worry about, trying to fit into anybody else's schedule. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I do love hanging out with my family and my, I've had plenty of isolation this year. So I like a good long day in the studio. I like to be able to spend a lot of time there. So a good long day is one without distractions.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no phone, no appointments, just get in the zone and go. So
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said it's when you can get in that zone and go. So you don't have anything hanging over your head that you have to do later, any appointments you have to go to. You can just go and work for however long. Because sometimes you get in a groove and the last thing you want to do is leave or change what you're doing. You just want to stay there. And those are great days.
Yep.
So, how do you manage your business tasks? You have marketing and you've got your packaging and shipping, and then you've got sourcing your materials, and then teaching on top of that and marketing those classes. So, how do you manage those things with making work? Do you have certain days that you do it? Do you have certain hours that you allow yourself? Like Mondays is for this. How do you keep it all organized? Do you have any tips for people who are starting out or struggling with this in their workflow?
Well, I think deadlines are a gift, a real gift, because then you know that you've got to finish something by a certain date. But as far, juggling all of those other tasks, I think the big difficulty for juggling the other tasks is that it's a different part of your head that you have to engage to make stuff compared to building a website or doing the photography that you need to get good at to run your business. And then you got to communicate with people. And I find that I really need to compartmentalize my tasks so that if I can get everything all done that has to do with the job that I have to do, then I can just forget it and not think about it again. So that I can focus on my right brain tasks that I want to be doing. Because I can't be distracted by the left brain jobs that are waiting in line to get done. So yes, I think what advice would I give somebody? Make a list, designate a certain amount of time for doing each thing, and then set time aside where you're gonna, without any distractions, just work on the thing that you want to make, because you can't be in that part of your brain that goes to the zone if you're thinking about your website.
Yeah.
It's not congruent. And I think it's one of the places where people have the most difficulty in juggling. I see myself as a juggler where I've got 10 balls in the air at all times, and occasionally I drop my arms and all the balls fall to the ground, and then I decide which one I'm going to pick up because I just get too overwhelmed.
Speaking of difficulty, a lot of artists really don't feel comfortable selling their work, or they hate it. They can't embrace it. They don't know how to do it well. They have no problem making jewelry or work, but then the whole thing about how do I go find homes for this and the right buyer. You've sold more pieces than most artists that I know. So what would be your advice for how, and maybe what do you like doing best? Do you like going to shows, or do you like galleries? Or online selling? Is there something that you would recommend of how to approach sales in a way that could help build your business if you're at that point in your career?
Well, I've been very lucky because I've always sold everything that I could make. And so I used to enjoy going to the shows because I really do like meeting those people that are going to be wearing my work and that collect it and appreciate it. But if I was trying to get going these days, I sure don't think I would want to be going out and doing these shows because it's not the same as it was back in the days of Rhinebeck. It's just not.
Yeah.
So I'd have a little trouble doing that. I think my best advice would be only make stuff that you love to make. because that's going to be what sells.
Mm-hmm.
If you're making stuff because you think it's marketable, it's probably not marketable. It doesn't matter how long it takes you to make it. Some pieces I sell for $5 an hour, and sometimes some pieces I sell for $1,000 an hour.
Yeah.
So, so for pricing, there's always the wow factor. You know, that if you, my dad used to say, how much would you be happy to see it go for? Mm. How much, what would make you happy to see that piece sell for, to get it, to have it leave? And some pieces that once I've done the piece, I'm not that attached to them, and I just assume make my materials back, you know, so those ones go really cheap. But then there's pieces that I know I'd be disappointed if they sold right away, because I know they're really good, they're real inspired. Mm-hmm. So those ones end up being marked higher, and sometimes I don't know until after I've sold it that it was too cheap. Yeah. You know, that I was going to regret it. But yeah, make what you love. Make what you love, because if you design it to be marketable, it's probably not.
Great advice. Thank you for that. And it's so great to talk to somebody and be able to ask those questions who's been in the industry and has seen it over time change, and then also who has done different things and can give you that sort of this is where what really matters. So I appreciate you sharing that information. You're a very generous person with your information, so thank you. We don't always get to see the person behind the artist, like their personal life, although it's a marketing rule that people buy from those that they know, trust, and like, at least nowadays. So that's why people love celebrities, because they feel like they know, trust, and like them because they've seen who they're with or their kids or where they live or whatever. So a lot of us have studio companions and assistants and our spouses that are integral to our success. So who refills your well and supports you?
Well, my husband has been a wonderful support over the years. There he is, there's Gary. And this year, he's just been a complete gem. When the isolation started, I realized right away that I was going to have to reinvent myself in order to be the person that I needed to be during this time, which was make a way for my students to stay focused and engaged while we were waiting to resume the classes that I had already scheduled, never realizing that it was going to take this long. Yeah. My husband is not a videographer and he's not an editor, but he, bless his heart, has figured out how to do all of this filming and editing so that this online workshop stuff is possible for me, because I don't want to learn how to do all of that. And he's been really great. And then my daughter, who also, she lives in a cottage on the property. I'm so grateful for that. She hasn't always lived on the property, but I'm so grateful to have her here, especially now. And she's an amazing, wonderful help. And she also has this enamel supply business that is kind of like my partner business at this point, because I can just say, I'm doing a new workshop, we're going to need to stock these colors, and she orders them and they're here and I don't have to worry about them. So anyway, yeah, so those are the two people that are daily in my life. And then we live on a little ranch. We have 5 horses. There's Fuji, she's my heart horse. And we have 3 dogs and 2 cats. And, you know, that's sort of like the company I keep around here.
I love it. I love it. And I love that you have built this support system that you also, it's not only a support system, it's actually a lifeline. You know, it's somebody who is there, you enjoy spending time with them, and then they also are part of your business. And I am guilty of doing the same thing. When I first started a whole lot of whimsy, I was like, I need a photographer because we have 3,800 different items to photograph. So here's a camera, honey. You're going to have to learn how to do this. And he was like, what? And, it's not my job. I have a full-time job already. And then soon it was like, okay, now you've got to learn how to do this, operate this tool, or do this thing for me. And then I got my son involved. And bought him a camera and said, okay, now it's your turn to do this, and your dad's going to do this other thing with the tool for me. And so I love when families can work together and then support each other like that. So beautiful. It's just a really beautiful thing. Plus, you get to spend more time with your daughter, which is amazing. It's amazing.
Yes, it is.
So now tell us a little bit about your personal studio and your teaching facility, and when will you start back up with in-person classes? And you guys, down in the lower right-hand corner, it does have her website that has her online classes. So that is the link to that, but we'll post it later too. But her facility is amazing, so you'll see pictures of that for classes.
Yeah, it's actually, this is my backyard, and there's two of the classes that we had to postpone were in April last year, called the Opalescent Wisteria, and so those ones ended up being online. And right now, my wisteria is about to start looking like this. This is my backyard, and yeah, so that's a good place to start. This is inside my my studio, where I have 600 square feet, and half of it is metal shop and half of it is enamel and office. And so yeah, so this building that I have my studio in, my studio's in a corner of a very big structure that was a horseshoeing school in the 60s and 70s, and it was a pole barn. So in the structure, you can, when you look the right direction, you can see these poles that look like telephone poles that are in the middle of the room. And yeah, there's one. See, there's a pole right in the middle of my metal shop, and so, and it's because this was a 4,000 square foot barn that was just poles and a roof, and that was it when we moved here, and then we slowly built into it. So this part of the building was part of my husband's hat manufacturing company, and they outgrew it and moved out of that space and left this 4,000 square feet for me.
Nice.
And yeah, so this is my classroom, and this is only half of it. Where I'm sitting right now is in the well, let's see.
It's in the back far corner.
If you look about to the middle of the room there, there's a black chair. That's where I'm sitting right now. So I'm sitting looking out at what is behind me in this picture, and then that green wall that was off to the side there is my daughter's business. She has 800 square feet, 900 square feet in a couple of side rooms here that are hers for the enamel art supply business. And yeah, so how lucky was that I inherited this gigantic space, and boy, now I can really collect a lot of stuff.
And is this from one of your classes? I see some familiar faces in there.
Yeah, this was a class. Must have been from the fall of 2019. And so generally my classes are 12 people maximum, although we could easily fit 100 people in this room. But I can't stay focused enough to teach more than 10 or 12 people at one time. And yeah, I can't wait to get back to teaching classes in person. I like that a lot better than filming.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to film a class and then to
oh
promote
my gosh.
it. It's a lot.
It's really, unbelievable. I had to learn to do so many new things. Just getting them launched online is a real feat, I'll tell you.
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so the very last thing we like to do is go over your favorite tools and supplies that you couldn't live without. And we do it sort of David Letterman style where we start with number 10. So your number 10 favorite tool are these tiny little mortar and pestles. And how big are they? They couldn't be like more than a couple
Well,
inches?
so I have two sizes here. And I got them out so that you can see. The one that's in this picture here. Let's see. Let me see if I can get it. Here it is. It's the mortar and
Tiny.
pestle. So these are synthetic sapphire, and my gosh, they're pretty pricey.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, until I had one of my own, I never knew how wonderful they really are. But they are amazing, amazing tools. So this one here is my mid-size one, and it's about 2.5 inches in interior diameter. And then I have another one that's a really big one for when I'm really grinding up lump and
Right.
going after really big stuff. But the ones that I use, I actually have 5 of these itty bitty ones because I use these when I'm doing very intricate shading and grinding it down to like 325 or finer mesh, and then I've got that very fine enamel that I can create effects that are not splotchy and granular.
Yeah.
I can really get some smooth stuff anyway. I love these.
Thank you for sharing that. I haven't seen those before, so now another tool I
They're
need to have.
amazing. Yeah. So, and if you're not ready to invest this kind of money, because you'll find when you find them online that they're pretty expensive, the best alternative is a scientific grade porcelain.
Okay.
You don't want a kitchen mortar and pestle. You definitely don't want marble. So a scientific grade porcelain is your next best bet, and they're way cheaper than these.
Yeah. Yeah. I use those for the flux that I use for the steel and gold fusing. We have to grind up the flux. And yeah, the other mortar and pestles are not very good. You have to get the scientific ones. But I had not heard of these, so thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your number 9 is this inexpensive microscope.
Yes, this was something I discovered last year, and I have a very expensive Meiji microscope with a trinocular with a camera on it and attached to a monitor and on an Acrobat stand. You probably know what all of that is, right? And I cannot make friends with the thing. So to sit and work under it is so difficult for me that I end up just really frustrated with it. So mostly what I was using my big expensive microscope for was to check and see how bad I had already messed something up. So I saw this online, and it's $140. And my hack is I set it up backwards so that little stand that you see there is facing the other way, so that I can set this onto a pedestal so that I can get farther away from the camera on it so that I can have better working space under it.
Yeah.
But the screen is a 7-inch screen, so I can sit with it right in front of my face and look at the screen, and something that's a half an inch big will fill the whole screen. So to do stone setting and grinding out blemishes in enamel and stuff like that, it's just an amazing piece of equipment. $140. I love it.
It is amazing. And I know that after you showed it, I was thinking about getting one. And then I noticed that Kevin Potter got one and showed it to his group. And a lot of people started getting them. Is there much of a learning curve? Like when you get a microscope, there's a bit of a learning curve to look into it.
Huge.
And then, yeah, it's huge. And then,
Yeah.
is this easier?
It's so easy.
Really?
There's almost no, that was the problem with learning to use the big microscope, was that I couldn't get my hand-eye coordination together on it, and with this, it was pretty seamless. It was easy.
Might be something I have to get.
Yeah.
I think I need another tool. Your number 8 are the Mason stains, and I love these. Zeneb is one of my good friends. I love her, and she does such a good job with these two.
Yeah. So anyway, this was one of Martha Banias's test plates that she does. And if you ever have the chance to take a class from Martha Banias, I would run to do it, because she's an amazing teacher, and nobody knows more about this, about making marks in enamel than she does, I don't think. She's just amazing. Besides, I just love her as a person. So.
Yeah, they're great. And then your number 7 is the Wolf Clay by Kate Wolf.
Yeah. So I took a class from I never took classes the first 30 years or so that I was making stuff. Maybe the first 40 years. But then I take classes whenever I can, because I love doing it anyway. Anyway, I took a class from Kate Wolf, and she was talking about this stuff, and I thought, wow, I should try that. It's like, I don't know what I did before I had it. It's just so great, because you can set something up to solder and support it and envelop it, and it's just really, really great stuff. I really love it. It's I wouldn't want to live without it.
Yeah, and she's selling it now direct. So I will, if anyone's interested, I can give a link for that. This is my setup that I did a piece with, and those jump rings had to be at a certain angle, at a certain height, and they had to be perfect, because that piece holds a grizzly bear claw. So if it was in the way, it wouldn't work. And nothing would have worked well without that. So it is a lifesaver when you have a difficult soldering operation. Your number 6 are the Stoddard Extra Full Miniature Cotton Buffs. I love these too.
Yeah, so the place where I'm using those is after I do my 800 grind on a enamel, then with my flex shaft or micromotor, I use these with cerium and tin oxide in a slurry to do my final polish on a piece, and they're just the best. I love them.
Are you mixing the cerium and the tin together, or are you doing them separate?
Yeah, I'm mixing them together. So in the 70s, I was the secretary of the Santa Cruz Gem and Minerals Society, and I was like 22 years old, and everybody else in the club was in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I was making cloisonne, and I was finding that I was getting undercuts right next to my wires. So I asked my friend Hal why I was getting undercuts next to my wires, and he said, well, that's because you're using cerium oxide, and it's a glass polish, but it's not polishing the metal. So I suggest you add 10% tin oxide, and that's going to cut the metal and the glass and cut down on your undercutting. And so that's my formula, always has been 90% tin or 90% cerium, 10% tin, mixed up in a slurry.
Awesome.
And I used to do it on a leather belt on my expandable drum, but this is so much easier. Oh, look at who's that?
This is Sadie. She just wanted to be part of this. She's probably telling me it's dinner time. Your number 5 is your Durston draw bench. I love that. I wish I had room for the legs. I have the bench top one, which works pretty nicely too, but not as nice as that one. I saw it in your studio.
Yeah, it's a great piece of equipment. I used to put my drop heights in a vise on my workbench, and then put one foot up on the vise and use my legs to pull my wire down. And at some point, I got to the stage where I was trying to pull bigger wire than I was physically capable of pulling down. So my husband bought me this draw bench, and my daughter went to Oakland and picked it up in the trunk of her car. and anyway, I love it, and I use it more than I would ever have imagined that
Yes.
I would ever use it. It's a great piece of equipment.
Yes, it makes it really easy where you're not having that frustration either. So it's a good tool to have. Your number 4 is your green lion saw frame.
Yeah, I bought the first one because it was so sexy. And then I figured out that I really liked it. And I am not sure how many I've bought now because I keep on giving them to friends. Somebody will show up here and they'll be sawing something and go, wow, this is a nice saw frame. And I just say, oh, just go ahead and take it. And then, because I usually have 3 or 4 of them around at any given time because they're great saw frames, and I like the balance of them, and they're so sexy.
Yeah, they are. I love the handle. Your number 3 is the Croft kiln, Patsy Croft.
Yeah, so I actually only have one Croft kiln. She limits you to how many you can have because they take a while to manufacture. They're very, very limited production. I have 4 Paragons, and those are okay, but the Croft kiln is so precise that I can actually fuse my metal in the kiln because you can it has a 2-degree swing, and my Paragons have a 40-degree swing.
Yes, to 100.
So yes, yeah. Well, I have one that has a 100-degree swing, but most of the other 3 live 40 degrees usually once they're warmed up. But yeah. So this is to have a 2-degree swing is unbelievable.
Yeah, that's nice.
So it's just such a precise piece of equipment, and I actually don't use it to enamel in very often. Usually, all I use it for is for flashing my surfaces on pieces and for fusing.
Nice.
So,
your number 2 is your custom firing racks, and this is from Enamel Arts. Right?
Enamel Art Supply, yeah. So I bought 4 racks like this at an enamel conference in I'm thinking like 1981, and I used them until they were paper thin because they do get thinner after a while, and I never was able to find them again. So I had a metalworker friend make me some maybe 10 years ago, and then I gave them away and sold them to my students, and pretty soon I didn't have any. And then when my daughter took over this business, I thought, I need to have somebody that can make these for her. So now she has them in 3 different sizes, and I love them because those woven ones get so teetery, and the trivets don't sit flat on them, so they wobble when you put them into the kiln, and I was always dumping things. And anyway, I love these perforated racks, and those are my second to the favorite tool, I guess, huh?
Yeah, and it would be great for soldering too because it's not as thick as those woven ones, so that it doesn't absorb as much heat and become a heat sink. And it's flat, as you said.
I have not tried this to solder on. Have you tried it to solder on?
Yep.
You have?
Yep.
So you've used this rack?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, that's really good to know
Yeah.
because that was not something I've ever tried to do. So now I'm going to have to try.
Yeah. I always try. Tools are never off limits. They're like, okay, I'm going to see the max, what
Yeah.
it can do. And then your
Yep.
number one is, of course, all of the enamels that you guys sell at the Enamel Art Supply. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. So, um, yes, anybody that's been here knows that I have an enamel habit. And when my daughter took over the business, I found two other manufacturers in Japan to buy enamels from, and there's hardly a duplicate in the whole. There's hundreds of colors, and
Wow.
they're all just incredible.
That
So
keeps your daughter busy with cleaning those, with
it does,
keeping them
yeah.
organized for sales. Those are beautiful.
They're incredible. So yeah, so I think that having really exquisite enamels to use has been it is really a boon to have great enamels to use. And then my hands are really my favorite tool. I'm so lucky to have hands that are this old that are still working so well.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I'm so
Definitely.
grateful.
Without our hands, we can't work very well. So that's a definite must. I want to thank you so much for your time and for sharing all your secrets with us and being so generous with telling us about your work. And I look forward to seeing what you create next. You all, please check out her social media pages, which are on the screen right now, and her website. And if you can, go to her Thinkific page and check out her classes that she has, her online classes. They're worth every penny, and you're going to get lots of advice from decades of trial and error. If you have any questions, post them in the comments, and I will make sure that she sees them, and I'll either type back an answer or have her do it. And I will make sure that you have her contact information. If you're seeing this on YouTube, please, again, click subscribe and like this interview so that she can see that, and the comments there will be answered if you ask a question as well. And if you leave a comment in the month of April or May, I'm going to be drawing a name and giving away one of our new Jewelry Makers Guild enamel pins, so you'll be able to put that on your apron or your bag or whatever. And thank you for your support. We really do appreciate it. Also, I'd love for you to follow my pages and to follow me on social media if you get a chance. I often share tips and techniques and tools and videos and future podcast guests. And in 2 weeks, our guest will be Melissa Muir. And then 2 weeks after that, we have Teresa Kiplinger, who is an enamelist as well and a Chasing a Repoussé artist. So lots of great people coming up in the series for the Jewelry Makers Guild podcast. Thank you so much for being my guest today. I am so honored.
My pleasure.
I can't believe you said yes. I know you had some concerns about the audio and making sure that you could see it, but we did fantastic, except for the little glitch at the beginning where it was my fault because I didn't put the screen low enough. And so everybody got to see my husband, but that's at least they got to see all of you, and we didn't have a mess up there. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and you guys have a wonderful week. Go create something wonderful and magnificent and get a little art therapy. Thank you.
Tonya.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
It was so good.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate you being so careful to speak clearly.